Hey Todd, it's great to see you again. How are you?
Great, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's good to reconnect again. And we're doing this leadership series of executive video interviews, and I think you'll be able to really bring some great perspectives to the whole conversation. But why don't we start, if you would, by just telling our audience who you are, what you do, etc.
Sure, I work with ERE Media. If you don't know ERE, we are a multimedia company, meaning that we have print publications, online publications, we put on conferences, we have webinars, we have probably a half dozen or so websites. We have all these properties, all these media, all about helping people hire better, recruit better, manage people better. And we have essentially four different brands, one for human resources people, one for in-house recruiters, one for external recruiters like a headhunter, and then a fourth for sourcers. And within each of these brands, as I mentioned, we have all multimedia conferences, websites, publications, and more.
Well, I have been to your conferences and read your material, and not to flatter you publicly, but you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
And the industry's changing like crazy. And I was waiting for you to say in-house recruiters, out-house recruiters, and stuff like that, but you didn't go for it.
I probably will in a few minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So why don't we start by, if you would, give us what your perspective, or if you will, definition of leadership really is.
What we've talked about through ERE for a decade and a half is that so much of hiring and so much of recruiting and managing people is broken. It doesn't work. Why? Because people do what everyone else does. They ask silly interview questions about where you're going to be in 5 years. They ask you what your strengths and weaknesses are, which everyone can be coached to answer. They do things like that, not just interview questions, but other parts of the process, all based on what others do. And in that context, what we've talked about at ERE, which I think is true, is leadership is not doing what others do just because others do it. It's doing what's right for you, what's right for your organization, what's been proven, what can be successful, not just repeating what you think works but actually doesn't.
Yeah, it's interesting because I so often in our searches for management, C-suite board of directors, whatever, the interviewer or ers would say, how can I really define or interview them for leadership? I mean, there's the obvious ways, but they really want to know, how can I really tell? So, what you're saying is partly a good answer for that.
Yeah, I listen to, sometimes at Starbucks, I listen to people being interviewed, not for jobs at Starbucks, but because that's where people meet to interview
Right.
someone is at Starbucks. And I listen to the interviews, and it's like if you've seen one, you've seen another. They're asking the same questions, and the questions all basically translate to how well can you market yourself by answering this question? It's not really how can you do the job, it's how well can you slickly answer this question and show me how verbose and articulate you are and everything else.
Yeah, one of my favorites that seems to come up every so often, thank God not too often, is if you were an animal, who would you be?
Right,
That's a classic.
right.
So, with respect to also social media, which obviously, as in technology in general, has played a huge part in our lives, but certainly in recruitment and talent, but also on leaders' actions. And I'll give you an example. I had a senior executive a little while back tell me, it used to be we had an issue, we had a situation, a problem, bring the people into my office, we'd talk about it heart to heart, straightforward, get it done. I have that meeting now, he tells me, and before the meeting's over, it's on Twitter.
Right,
How
right.
do you think social media has impacts leaders, and especially the business owners and management, and actions that they take or don't take?
You have to be more transparent. I mean, it sounds kind of obvious, but with Glassdoor, with Twitter, with Facebook, if you're trying to present on your corporate careers site and your messages about your brand, your employment brand, if you're trying to present something about your workplace, what it's like to work there, it's not really true, or it's partly true, that's not going to work. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot. You're going to get caught. So I think leaders and managers and recruiters need to be more authentic about what their workplace is really like, because of social media just amplifies everything. You've seen it like in politics, right? If a
Right.
politician's one way, but they're caught on an open mic, or they're caught saying something that's perceived as racist or whatever and on an open mic, or leaving a campaign event, they seem to always be caught on social media with a cell phone or YouTube or something, and a cell phone video that goes on YouTube. So, and I think that's true in business too. It will come back to bite you if you're not authentic.
Yeah, there's no doubt. One other executive told me a while back. He said, "I think the only safe place I think I still have is my own private bathroom."
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't sure about that one.
Right.
So
Right.
it's fascinating. Well, you have a lot of experience in the recruitment world, and I wanted to know, how do you find that leaders in management these days differentiate themselves, even their organization, to attract the talent that best fits them?
This may be a cynical answer, but unfortunately, I think, and if I understand the question right, I think unfortunately a lot of people hire people that do fit them. That's bad. I don't, if I understood your question, if you're hiring people who fit you, that's bad. And I think that's what happens. Companies hire people like them. If they don't, they hire people who they want to hang out with, they want to have a beer with, they think are cool. That sounds okay. I mean, why not hire someone who's nice and you get along with and you want to spend more time with than you spend with your spouse, your dog, your kids, your neighbors? Makes sense. But it makes sense only in the short run, I think. I think in the long run, if someone doesn't do a good job, you get so annoyed at them, you don't want to have a beer with them anymore. Or if they don't do a good job, you wish you never hired them. They're not as cool as you thought they were. They're not as nice as you thought they were. On the contrary, if you hire someone who's maybe you do or don't want to have a beer with, but they're good, they're smart, they can just do the job. I think over time, you appreciate them, you like them, you want to spend time with them, they're interesting. You want to hear how they do things, you want to hear more about them, they're fascinating, you want to spend time with them, they're cool. If I understood your question, I think companies unfortunately hire people who fit them, but maybe they shouldn't.
I think that's a great answer. And actually, it's been one of the most unique, best answers I've had, because a lot of times, you're right, they're thinking about, when I ask that, the fit, but not necessarily that they're the fit for them specifically. So I think you're 100% right. It's the easy way to go. And in respect to boards of directors too, then, because that brings up that point, we do a lot of those searches too and advise people looking to get on boards. How have you found in your experience then the makeup, or in other words, who boards are comprised of? Do they, number one, for their own board, do they do the same thing still, get people that they feel good and easy with? And on the second part, I guess the question is, do you find that boards will be made up of people that also address the critical importance of talent acquisition?
They probably should do more of that. So, for example, if you are, every company wants veterans right now. People coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan, they have these unbelievable skills in their 20s. You know, they can do everything, soft skills, hard skills, technical skills. They don't panic when things are tough. They know how to get along with others. They know how to lead. They know how to follow. I mean, these are coveted people, military. And a lot of companies don't know how to attract veterans, or look at their resumes, or how to fit them into their jobs. So maybe, you put a veteran on the board. That might be an idea. And maybe that veteran is a prominent veteran who can attract people, or maybe they're not prominent, but they're just good at talent acquisition. That would be one way, I think, to use a board position to fill a talent acquisition gap. Another is, like, say your company has a reputation as being stodgy or boring or old school. Maybe you could find someone to be on the board who represents a more cutting edge company, or maybe just a cutting edge technology, or maybe they're sort of known as someone who was an inventor or something like that, even an inventor of a computer program or something like that. I think you could use board positions more as talent acquisition magnets.
Yeah, I think we're finding that to a great degree in our educational boards. Obviously, again, it's not the good old boys club anymore, and they are going more diverse, not just with diversity, not just being black, white, women type of thing, but I think that's also a great point, is even the energy level that you bring up, and the branding of the whole company by who's on their board helps you attract great people. Up and coming leaders, young people, you mentioned 20s, and I know you do a lot of education in ERE. How would you advise young people, young potential leaders, to prepare for their careers in business in general, and to potentially be leaders with respect to everything we talked about, including the whole world of digital media, etc.?
I'd say with social media, you don't want to become so encapsulated by it that you forget to learn the basic principles of branding and marketing and advertising and maybe sales that are really the important things to know before you start using social media, or before you start using it to at its best. I worked on a political campaign more than a decade ago, managing a campaign in Northern California, a town called Fairfield, and I worked with the mayor. I trained the mayor and the city council, business leaders, and military leaders, actually military Air Force town, in messaging. What's our message? How do we stick to it? When we get to a debate, there was one on TV, and people ask you a question, how do you answer that question the way you want it to be answered? How do you get your message out, no matter what the question is? Staying on message, that's the kind of thing that I think people who are up and coming, that kind of thing, they should learn and see if they can be good at. And then using social media, you can amplify your message, you can decide how to spread it, you can decide what your target audience is, that kind of thing. But it needs to start with a foundation of the principles of branding and marketing and advertising and so on.
Smart. So do you think an accountant can do that as well as a tech or marketing person coming out of college even?
Can do what?
Can learn how to message themselves properly, or are they learning to message themselves properly at a young age?
I think so, because I've seen people who have been in business or politics for years who go off message, and I've seen people who are running for office for the first time who the second they get on the radio, they say, congratulations on your primary victory, and they go, well, thank you, it's all about jobs. And it's like before they even start saying thank you, they start talking about their message, so that if you turn the radio off or you get tired of listening to the windbag, you've still heard their message before you switch the radio off.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. With talking about stuff you've done in the past and everything, we've all had influences in our lives and our careers. Can you give us an example of someone who's done that with you, been an influencer in your career and potentially your life?
Sure. My grandfather was one. He died not that long ago, a couple years ago, but and I hate to kind of reel off the cliches about that generation that grew up in the Depression and fought World War II, but he fit all of those and then some. He was, Pearl Harbor hit, and he was volunteered, and he was in the Navy. He happened to be in human resources in the Navy, of all things, doing employee assessments of all things of the sailors. But he was a guy who just, not only did he not brag about himself ever being in the war, he never even talked about it. His assumption was, your country needs you, of course you do something for your country. Why would you do otherwise? So whereas nowadays, people sneeze and they brag about it on Facebook. They have, their boss says they had, a good day at work, and they post it on Facebook. So, I just really admired that kind of modesty in him. Another, I was just thinking, another is my college track coach. His name's Marv. The guy, he was a coach. He retired recently, but he was a coach for probably 35 years. And, he just made everyone better around him. He just wanted the organization to succeed, and it wasn't about him. Ultimately, he was a wildly successful coach, and he could have gotten a job anywhere. And he stuck with his job because he liked where he lived, he liked his job, he liked his family, and the town, the schools. But the guy succeeded by making other people better, his athletes better around him. And I think that's really impressive.
It is impressive. In fact, I don't know if you recall, I compare a lot of things to sports, because I think there's a lot of synergy. And two things you actually hit on, champions are champions because they make other players around them better all the time, and it applies to business too. And the ones who have done it and keep doing it know how to win. They don't celebrate the one little thing they did that day or the one touchdown they scored like they won the world's championship. They know how to win. So I think what you're saying is right on the money.
I remember there was a guy who used to play for the Lakers and Houston Rockets, Robert Horry.
Sure.
And I remember people used to say, I don't get it. I mean, everywhere he goes, he wins the championship. Like, the guy's won like championships at 2 or 3 different teams, probably 4 or 5 championships. I don't get it. How does he do it? Well, there's a reason he does it. It's because he wants to win. He's not. You don't have to be a superstar to be a winner, to be a leader, and to be a success. Although sometimes those things do go hand in hand.
Well, you are a superstar, but I know what you mean. By you don't have to be a superstar, but you are. And it's not by fluke. I mean, things have to happen. You have to have talent, obviously, but it's not by fluke that a fellow like that wins everywhere he goes. Yeah. Because, say the obvious, he's a winner. And he creates that culture and everything that's so important. So I think you're right on the money. Do you have Here's a question you've never heard before, but I love asking it. A most admired leader, the person past or gone or even present that you'd like, quote unquote, to have dinner with one time?
Uh, no, I think that
That's the most original answer I've had.
yeah, no, I think I would default to some of the people I mentioned, like the track coach and others who are not necessarily famous. So I don't have a sexy answer about someone who's famous, dead or alive, whose name was struck a chord.
It doesn't have to be. If you notice, I didn't say famous. It could be someone you admired. So it
Again,
could be.
I would say someone like a college track coach who, I mean, here's someone who talk about management challenges. You have people coming into the track team every year and graduating every year. What motivates these people is radically different. What motivates an athlete, one person wants to be screamed at, one person like me doesn't ever want to be screamed at and doesn't need that, and wouldn't do well being screamed at. Other people want to be motivated. Athletes are so different, college athletes, and they change every year. People graduate, people come in, whatever, people get hurt. And so that's an incredibly interesting job. And to see that, I think, is really fascinating and amazing.
No, I agree. Well, here's some personal, not too personal questions, but a couple of like 1, 2 word answers. Do you have a favorite sport?
As a spectator, probably March Madness, I think it's just amazing to see people who don't follow basketball that closely. I don't follow the college basketball that closely during the year. To see so many kind of commoners or lay people like me suddenly filling out the brackets at work and at home and emailing people you went to high school with 20 or 30 years ago or 10 years ago and doing that together, I think it's such a beautifully American holiday, March Madness. I mean, it's such an American thing. It's so cool. It's such a bonding thing. I love March Madness as a spectator. As a participant, probably, as I mentioned, track and field. I ran track from a very young age all the way through middle school, high school, and through college, and coached a little bit post-college kids in Virginia.
So that's why it's hard to catch you during a conference, huh?
Right.
Got it. Do you have a favorite movie and or TV show?
This is kind of an oldie but a goodie, probably quarter century old, but and it's nothing to do with leadership or management whatsoever, although I guess there's been a management book written about everything, so maybe it has. But I used to love the movie, and I still do, Stand By Me, Stephen King. It was based on a Stephen King story called The Body, and maybe I'm a sucker for nostalgia, or maybe it's the music, or maybe it's the acting. It's a simple story. You can follow it. You can understand it. It's just a great story, and so sweet. And Stand By Me, I thought was an incredible movie. A quarter century later, still is.
Good choice. Yeah, good choices. In that sense, do you have a favorite book as well?
I just read a great book, actually, about 2 months ago. It was called Make It Stick. It was about marketing, which may sound really boring, but actually it was a great book by the Heath brothers. And it was telling different stories about successful marketing, like the Subway restaurant, how Subway struggled to get people, and then suddenly they got this guy Jared who lost the weight through eating the Subway, and his calories went down, and so his weight went down, and it was such a vivid, emotional story that Subway just took off with the Jared story. So they tell these stories in that book about successful marketing. It's a great book.
I'll have to check it out. I did read Howard Schultz's book of Onward with Starbucks, which is also pretty good. But I just finished a book called Unbroken, the one that Angelina Jolie's doing a movie about. Unbelievable.
I haven't read Unbroken. I feel like I've read it because I've heard so much about it. It's so amazing. And now at this point, I think I'm going to stick it out till the movie comes out.
Yeah, I'm sure the movie will be great, but it's a hell of a story. Local guy, obviously, too.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, just passed away. Last couple of things. You have favorite music? Type of music?
No, another just terrible answer. No, actually, I will say this, and our company is a media company, publishing company, and I do actually listen to songs pretty carefully because I think songwriters are like the best writers. So I don't know that I have a particular songwriter, but I would say that if anyone wants to be a good writer, I'd say listen to songwriters. The way they describe things are incredible, are so great. The way they can tell stories and the way they just use words to describe something instead of being so literal, they use these kind of figurative, colorful words to describe things. Um, and so I pay a lot of attention to the words of songs when I hear them on the radio or CDs.
I love that. That's a good answer. Favorite type of food?
I'm so I get so tired of the very well-meaning, but the intense focus now on what you shouldn't eat.
Right.
BPA and GMOs and HMOs and sucrose, fructose, glucose. My backlash is I still like and eat ice cream.
Me too, man.
There you go. Yeah.
Well,
Which
remember what
isn't
our
to
parents
say
said? Maybe your grandfather said it too. Everything in moderation.
exactly. I mean, I'm not suggesting that it's bad to be healthy, but I think that if you become so obsessed with fear, then in the end, you probably will just end up eating nothing. Yeah.
That won't be good either. So, hey, man, it's a real pleasure. Great insights. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much.